As you know, on Sunday night or Monday morning of every week, we post a new expository semiotics explaining why we would choose which lectionary readings. But in these readings, our dream is, and our desire is, to help you read the signs and fondle the details and spot the seminal metaphors, the condensed signs and the stories that are key for preaching to a digital culture. So strap on your seatbelt and join us as we prospect our passages for today. Welcome to the LenTalk for the fourth Sunday of Easter, May the 8th, 2022. The passages for today, Acts 9, 36 to 43, which is the one that I'm going to focus on because it is also, this is not on the liturgical calendar, but it's on the cultural calendar. And sometimes the two have to talk to one another. And today is on the cultural calendar, Mother's Day. And so we're going to look at Acts 9, 36 to 43, and the story of Dorcas, or as that's the Greek name, or other name is Tabitha, but she's more known for Dorcas. But the other passages, just so you know what they are. There is Psalm 23, okay, the Valley Psalm, one of the most endearing and special songs in all of the hymn book we call the Book of Psalms. There is the passage from John 10, 22 to 30, which is the time of Hanukkah in Jerusalem and the conflict over Jesus' claim that he is the Messiah, and the problems that come with their understanding, the predominant establishment understanding of who is the Messiah and what the Messiah does, and Jesus' understanding of the Messiah, which even his own disciples had trouble getting. But let's and then there's Revelation 9 or 7, 9 to 17. But let's look at Acts real quick, because this last week was a real long one, dealing with all the bestiaries and all the heavenly beings, and today we're going to make it hopefully a lot more pointed and a little more pungent, if you will. Acts 9, 36 to 43. In Joppa there was a disciple named Tabitha. In Greek her name is Dorcas. She was always doing good, helping the poor. About that time she became sick and died, and her body was washed and placed in an upstairs room. Lydda was near Joppa. So when the disciples heard that Peter was in Lydda, they sent 2 men to him and urged him, please come at once. Peter went with them, and when he arrived, he was taken upstairs to the room. All the widows stood around him, crying and showing him the robes and other clothing that Dorcas had made while she was still with them. We still do this today at memorial celebrations and funerals. We gather around the person, their casket or their picture, some of their great crafts and contributions. Peter sent them all out of the room. Then he got down on his knees and prayed. Turning toward the dead woman, he said, Tabitha, get up. And she opened her eyes, and seeing Peter, she sat up. He took her by the hand and helped her to her feet. I emphasize that because that's going to be key in just a moment. He took her by the hand and helped her to her feet. Then he called for the believers, especially the widows, and presented her to them alive. This became known all over Joppa, and many people believed in the Lord. Peter stayed in Joppa for some time with a tanner named Simon. I greet you today in the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Let me repeat. I greet you today in the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. You can't talk about the faith of our fathers without also talking about the faith of our mothers. In fact, the faith of our fathers is what often our mothers taught us. So we're doubly due and diligent and dutiful too, always. And I would challenge you from now on, pastors either listening to this, when you talk about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, don't forget about Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and bring them all together. It is the faith of our fathers and mothers. And this is one of the uniquenesses of Jesus. He never forgot the mothers. He never forgot the women. He never forgot the widows. And in the story today, as Jesus said, everything I can do, you will be able to do. And so the disciples, literally, everything he did, include raise the dead. And they, here, raised Dorcas, Tabitha. Peter did, living out of that promise. In fact, you'll be able to do even greater things. And so here Peter, out of that spirit of greater things, raises from the dead Tabitha. Notice how he raised her, though. He raised her from the dead with reaching out to her hand and setting her on her feet. And so a key image here of this moment is the hands and the feet. And I want to give you what I think is, for me, one of the most impactful stories of hands and feet in my lifetime. Now, I admit this, I'm a, how do I put this? I am enamored of hands and feet. Many times when I'm looking at people, the first thing I look at is not their face. I look at their hands and their feet, because their hands and their feet reveal a lot about who they are. I'm just enamored by hands and feet. So I want to give you the hands and feet story of two people. One was a mother, and the other was not. But her name is Mother, because she was a mother to us all. So two mothers, two of the most famous women in my lifetime. And one named Mother Teresa, and the other a mother named Princess Diana. Now, I don't know how many of you know that they had a friendship. In fact, the meeting that Princess Diana, the first meeting, they met face to face twice. Once, the last time, just a week before in New York City, Mother Teresa was there, and Princess Diana made a trip just to visit with her friend Mother Teresa, whom she communicated with and who she had stories about. The first meeting, though, was in 1992. Now, the end of 1992, let's just put this in position. The end of 1992 is when Princess Diana announced her separation from Prince Charles. Now, this is not a divorce. It wasn't an announcement of divorce. The divorce did not take place until 4 years later, 1996, I think. But this was in December of this year. She announced her separation, and there was a lot of what gave her the courage to do this. Why did she do this? What enabled her to do this? And just to separate herself from this yoke of empire that she was carrying with her husband, and especially in light of his flagrant violation of marriage vows with somebody else. And so here we have, earlier in that year, the first encounter of Mother Teresa and Princess Diana. The meeting was actually written up by Mary C. Johnson, who was a sister. Now, Mother Teresa founded this order, and Mary C. Johnson was a nun. She later left the order, but she was a nun who, in some ways, hosted Princess Diana when they first met. And she wrote a first-hand account for the Huffington Post about that day that changed both of their lives forever. Actually, both of them were changed. And they met. Princess Diana spent most of the time actually meeting with the sisters, and she just fell in love with the sisters. But Mother Teresa hosted her herself in her tiny little office, bedroom, living room, monastic cell, really. And these two women met inside by themselves and talked for quite a while. And according to Mary Johnson, that they talked for longer than almost anybody else you'd ever seen Mother Teresa talk to, because Mother Teresa never gave anybody her undivided attention almost. She was always meeting with other people, and Mary Johnson had been with Mother Teresa for 15 years at that point. And before they left, they both entered the chapel to pray. And when they went to enter chapel, you have to take off your shoes. And so here is Princess Diana in all of her glorious glory. She had a white dress on with I don't know what they're called, pumps. I don't exactly know what pumps are, but they were shoes, black and white, mostly white, but some black trim. And so these designer shoes that probably cost a couple $1,000s, she took off. And Mother Teresa, for her part, took off her sandals. Now, this is at a time in Mother Teresa's life where she had worn these sandals for 20 years. Her feet are some of the most famous feet in the world because they were so deformed and they were so knobby and gnarled. And because when they never bought any shoes or footwear, and they just wore what people gave them. And Mother Teresa had a history of always taking the worst and giving the best to other people. And so she took some sandals that didn't really fit her feet. And so for 20 years, she had worn these sandals, and her toes were overlapping. They were twisted and bent and curved and gnarly and just what we would see as some ugly feet juxtaposed to some of the most beautiful feet. And I wish I'd have been there when they left that chapel, after they knelt together. They prayed Mother Teresa prayed for Princess Diana. And in that moment, in that chapel, two things happened. One, Mother Teresa pressed into Diana's hands a rosary, gave her a rosary. The other thing that happened is that, I'm not sure whether it was in her Bible, I can't remember, that Bible or diary, but she brought this little diary or this Bible she brought with her. But Mother Teresa, in her own hands, wrote in her Bible or diary, Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. The way, follow him. The truth, believe in him. The life, live for him. And she closed it up and gave it to Princess Diana. Can you imagine being there when they both left that little sanctuary chapel and put on their respective shoes? Mother Teresa putting on her sandals and her gnarled, deformed feet. Princess Diana putting on her magnificent, glorious, designer pumps, and putting those pumps on some of the most beautiful and most pedicured and cared for feet, pampered feet in the whole world. But Princess Diana came away changed. And other people have testified that after this meeting, she had a spiritual awakening and was never the same again. And she finally, all of a sudden, just felt like she had her sense of mission in life. And it was to continue Mother Teresa's ministry among the poor, among the maligned, among the marginal. And suddenly, Princess Diana's she had a mission beyond the royal marriage. And she was never the same again. That, as you know, they died the same week. I call them the two most beautiful women in the world. And it all depends on how you define beauty. But if you define beauty in terms of the three transcendentals of being, beauty, goodness, and truth, where they all have to be there for it to be, there's no more beautiful woman in the world than Mother Teresa. I mean, everything from her visage to her feet and even to her hands. A lot of pictures have been taken of Mother Teresa's hands. And a lot of photographs have been taken. They've been called the most beautiful hands in the world. I call them the most beautiful hands and feet in the world. And as Peter raised at Joppa, this woman, Dorcas, Tabitha, and pulled her by his hand and stood her on her feet. Look at your mother's hands. Look at your mother's feet. They tell a story. My mother had some of the most beautiful but ugliest hands in the world. They were thick, swollen, stubby. She never had a manicure in her life. And they were so deformed because she made a little money on the side when we were growing up on the street called Hungry Hill, because it was the poorest street in town, by making lye soap and selling it. Can you imagine what that does to your hands, to make lye soap and then sell it to people and give it to people? And she had lye soap, thick, swollen, beautiful hands, the most beautiful hands in the world. My mother's hands. Look, celebrate the hands and the feet of those around you. And those rosary beads, when Princess Diana died first, and then 5 days later, Mother Teresa died. I forget which came first, but they died within 5 days of one another. I think Princess Diana died first, and then Mother Teresa died later. But the same week, two mothers. When Princess Diana died, they brought to her dead body, before they took it to the coroner, they brought to the dead body two things: the rosary beads that Mother Teresa had given her, and they put her in her hands. As far as I know, she was buried with those rosary beads. The second is pictures of her children. And so she died with those two sacred icons: the rosary given to her by Mother Teresa that changed her life because it gave her mission and purpose and focus, and her proud identity as a mother of her children. The two, I don't know what happened to that Bible or that diary, but I want to end here this morning on Mother's Day by inviting you to encourage your people, especially on Mother's Day, to touch each other's hands. That's why the foot washing ceremony, the cleansing of the feet, was so important to the early Christians. It almost had a nip and tuck competition with the Lord's Supper as to which was going to be a sacrament. It was that significant to wash the feet, the hands and feet, the importance of the hands and the feet, and the laying on of hands, the touch that continues the tradition. And on Mother's Day, we celebrate the mothers and our fathers' touches, our parents' touches on us with their hands, and what their hands have done for us, what their hands have sacrificed for us, what their hands have meant for us. Exodus 17, 15 to 16. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner," Jehovah Nissi, saying, "A hand upon the banner of the Lord." In the ancient world, when you put your hand upon a banner, that meant, especially a banner that belonged to a king or a general, that meant you were signing, if you will, with your hand, your loyalty and your love and your devotion. You're willing to march under the banner of that king, to give your loyalty to that banner, to even risk your life in faithfulness to that person that you were pledging now your love to. And we, as disciples of Jesus, as Mother Teresa was encouraging Princess Diana, to stretch out her hand, stretch out your hand, and lay it on the Lord's banner, not the world's flags and the world's symbols of success, but to lay it on another banner. And she did it with the touch, both of the rosary and the signing of her book. I don't think she actually put Mother Teresa in the book. I think she just wrote that. I could be wrong about that. But this is why, for me, I mean, I have, here's one of my sacred icons. I love signed books. The idea that this book is one of the most important books in my life, Michael Polanyi's Personal Knowledge. And this book means the world to me because it was signed by Polanyi. In other words, I am touching an artifact that the author of this book, who's had such an important influence on my life, I've never met him, but he's been, aside from Jesus and Wesley and a few others, this guy is one of the most important people in my life because he totally changed me from a critical to a post-critical mindset. And he writes on it in his own handwriting. This is the first edition, 1958, it came out. "To Professor M.S. Bartlett, a token of thanks from Michael Polanyi, 20 June, 1950. It just sends chills up my spine. That's why apostolic succession has been so important, that these disciples and apostles have touched one another through time. You've been touched. And just through a signed book, I've been touched. Mother Teresa touched Princess Diana, and as she went into the world and touched others, continuing that touch, the touch that came from the most beautiful hands to maybe the second most beautiful hands. The touch of the Master, the touch of one another, the touch of the hands. I hate that phrase. We say to children, "You are the hope of the future." I hear that, and I think of it as the halitosis of the holy. This is bad breath. I mean, it's not brimstone breath, which is a whole other halitosis, but this is bad breath. It is bad odor. Our kids are not the hope of the future. The future is not in our hands. It's not in their hands. It's not in our hands. Besides, they are now. We shouldn't wait to the future to put them first. We should put them first now. They're not the hope of the future. They're now. But the future is already secured. It's secured in the hands of Jesus, in the cross and resurrection of Christ. Only holding the Eucharist in our hands can we say the future is in our hands. Only holding the cross in our hands can we say the future is in our hands. Only holding each other in our hands, with all of each other's otherness embraced in love, can we say the future is in our hands. So we today celebrate those who touched us with their hands and who tracked us with their feet. And we go from here to put the whole world in his hands. Every time I think about hands and feet, think about my mother's hands, my mother's feet, I think about the two most beautiful women in the world who died the same week. Hollywood beauty and holiness beauty. The Hollywood beauty of Princess Diana, the holiness, heavenly beauty of Mother Teresa. The most beautiful hands, the most beautiful feet in the world. And I leave you on this Mother's Day, the fourth Sunday of Easter, inviting you to put your hand in the hand of the man who stilled the water. Put your hand in the hand of the man who claimed the sea. Put your hand and take a look at yourself. And you can look at others differently by putting your hand in the hand of the man from Galilee. When Princess Diana put her hand in Mother Teresa's hands, who clasped her hand, she saw herself differently. And she became a new person with a new mission and a new focus. Happy Mother's Day. Christ is risen.